Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, Life with Patty, and I have a little bit of a different video for you today. Usually my videos are always sharing some of my crafts or cooking or sharing about a book or something like that, and not so much just like chatting, like just sit and talk. But I was watching Nona Grace and she was talking about a few things that had changed when her parents lived on their own as opposed to when they moved in with her. And so it got me thinking, how old are you? Like, the changes that have happened since I've been alive and my husband's been alive. So I was born in the 60s. He was born in the 50s. I was born in a bigger city. He was born in a very small town. So we do have some differences. For instance, I was born in a hospital that was about 9 stories high. And because I lived in San Jose is where I was born. And my husband lived in the little town that we live in now. And the hospital that he was born in, were you born in the old hospital or the hospital?
I was born in Rideout.
Oh, you were born at Rideout? Yeah. So they weren't even delivering babies here at that time?
No.
So he had to go about 40 miles. Oh, Rideout or Fremont?
Rideout.
Oh, okay. So he had to go about 40 miles over, his mom did, to deliver him. So, yeah, that's surprising. I thought that they were delivering babies in the 50s there.
Well, they were, but...
Although now, we're in 2025 and they're not delivering babies in Colusa. You have to go to Rideout or Woodland or Chico. You can't deliver babies in Colusa now. So, yeah. Anyways, so that's the difference in our hospitals. But Rideout at that time was probably 2 stories. Now it's 6 stories because they built onto it, of course. Okay, so for me, things that I remember in the 60s as opposed to now, growing up, we didn't have microwaves. I remember my son, my youngest son, who's now 32, he said to me one time, "Mom, what did you do when you were younger? Did you just like hang out at home and like watch movies and play video games?" I said, well, there was no DVD, VHS, beta, whatever. There was no, machines to watch movies on. And he says, well, if you liked a movie a lot, how did you watch it again? I said, well, you had to wait for it to come back to the theater. So, for instance, like when I wanted to watch the movie Grease, that came out in the 70s. We went to the movie theater like 6 times to see that movie. But, yeah, so we didn't have any of that VHS, DVD. And then I told him there was no, like, video games back then either. And then he's like, no microwave? How did you heat up your spaghetti? And I said, in a pot. So, yeah, we didn't have DVD players, microwaves, video games. Of course, there was no internet. Internet's only been around for what, like 15 years?
Ziploc bags.
Ziploc bags. I remember Ziploc bags, so my mom became the queen of the Ziploc bags. We used to make fun of her. Maybe was in the 70s when Ziploc bags came out. Maybe early 80s. I don't know, because I remember my mom would send leftovers home in Ziploc bags all the time. Of course, there were no cell phones. I remember I was already married and had kids when I got my first cell phone. And then we were talking about silly things like there was no coffee creamers. Maybe that's why I didn't like coffee when I was younger. Because I remember all you could put in your coffee was sugar or honey and milk. So I would put a whole bunch of milk and sugar in my coffee, and I just didn't like it. But once vanilla creamer came out, I was hooked. Let's see. Electric typewriters. So when my husband was in high school, they got their first electric typewriter when he was there. With me, they had them at school, but only about you had to be getting an A or a B in typing, which now they don't even call it typing. They call it keyboarding. because you're not on a typewriter anymore. You're on a computer with a keyboard. So for us, if you got A's and B's in typing, then you could get an electric typewriter. But if you didn't, then you had to be on the manual, just like hard to press typewriter. And we only had like 4 computers, and they were huge. They took up a whole room. So you probably didn't have computers at all, huh? I mean, I didn't even work on my first computer till I was married and I went to college. And then I went to college after I had my kids. So my youngest son was born in 92. And so then I went to college. I think I started college when in 95. And I had never been on a computer. And I knew at that point that was like odd. I should know how to. So I took a computer class, and my teacher kept talking about a mouse. And I was like, what are you talking about? Not realizing the mouse is the thing you move around. I was just thinking a real mouse. And yeah, I was already an adult. Now I'm okay on the computer now, just because at work now, our cash registers are now computers. And that was another thing my husband and I were talking about. Like, cash registers used to be very basic. It was just like a glorified adding machine. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it didn't even tell you what the change was. You had to figure that out in your head or use a little calculator off to the side. But I remember when we got our first, like, almost like computerized cash register at a Western store I was working at, I could type and that was in 1985. I could type faster than the register could keep up with me. So we had to type in the department number and then the price of the item. So if we typed in like department 3, it would say clothing, and then you put the price in. And so we would write everything by hand, which was so weird. We'd write the ticket out by hand and then go over to the register and type it into the register. I don't know why they did that. But I remember I typed faster than the computer could keep up with me. And so my boss is like, you gotta slow down. But anyways, so yeah, that was something that's improved a lot. In the 50s and 60s, I think my husband said there was no signal lights in Colusa, in the small town of Colusa. Now, I lived in Santa Clara, which was much bigger. We had, in the 60s, we had tons of signal lights everywhere. But they only had, when I moved here, I moved to Colusa in 85. There was 2, right? There was 2 signal lights on Fremont Street, and that was it. And so now we actually have 5 in the whole town. We have 1 by the shopping center, the 2 on Fremont, 1 on the main drug of town, and that's it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so we have 5 signal lights now. But we still are a small town compared to a lot of towns. Now, if you live in like Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, they have a lot of super small towns. I don't think my son's town, where he lives in Montana, I don't think they have any signal lights. But, I mean, it's only population, I think, 800. So there was no fast food restaurants in our town here, Colusa, until Burger King was our first fast food, right?
Yep.
And that was in, I want to say, the late 80s.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was our first fast food. Now, we fast forward all the way to 2025. We only have 2 fast food restaurants in this town, Burger King and Carl's Jr. We have a Subway, but I don't know that, and we have a Little Caesars, which just went in like last year. But those aren't like drive-throughs. Like, you can't drive through those. They keep having talk about we're going to get a Taco Bell. We had one a long time ago, but the owner just didn't pay his taxes. It's not that the town didn't do well with it, but it closed down. So But where I lived in Santa Clara, there was every kind of fast food you could imagine. There was Jack in the Box, McDonald's, Taco Bell, KFC. We had it all down there in the 60s. But it's a difference because it was a big city. So then my husband was talking about the prices of things changing. So a gallon of gas, he remembers getting it for $1.30. I can't remember how much when I first started driving. I don't know. I want to say it was around that. If my dad gave me $10, I could almost fill up my little El Camino. Chewing tobacco was 32 cents a can, and he says it's $8 a can now. I bet you it's even more expensive than that because he gave up chewing. So, and then cigarettes, he said, were 50 cents a pack, and he believes they're about $8. I'm thinking cigarettes right now are like $12, but I don't know. We don't smoke. So if you know, in the comments below, put it down there because I'm curious. So those are some things that, we were thinking about after we listened to Nona Grace. I remember talking with my grandmother, my dad's mom, and she says when she was little, they didn't have refrigerator or freezers. And she said that they would take the lard from the pig and render it down and put it in a big, like a big barrel. Mm-hmm. And then they would butcher their animals and salt them and then put it into those barrels of the lard. And then she says when they would want a piece, that her dad, my great-grandpa, would reach into the barrel and just feel for one and grab something, pull it out, and then they would rinse it off and cook it. Like, I can't even imagine that. That sounds so disgusting to me. And then I wonder about milk. Like, we like our milk cold, but I know that the girls that I work with say in Mexico, they don't refrigerate the milk. So I don't know, how does it not go bad? I don't know. So, so when my grandmother was little, I imagine you just like got it from the cow and then skimmed all the fat off it for butter and then drank it, I guess. Maybe you didn't drink milk like you do now, like my kids growing up, they loved milk. They loved to drink milk just with their meals, but maybe back then you didn't. I don't know. I know when I was a kid, we didn't have all the soda pop and stuff like they do now. My mom would make iced tea or lemonade and water and milk. But didn't you tell me you guys just had water and...
Yeah, but we had Kool-Aid.
Oh, we made Kool-Aid once in a while, too. Yeah, my mom did do Kool-Aid, too. Yeah.
We had Kool-Aid, but we didn't have a lot of soda.
Did you have Kool-Aid all the time? You had the option to have Kool-Aid all the time?
We had Kool-Aid all the time. When we were growing up as kids, we'd always have an option to have a Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I remember I even made Kool-Aid for my kids when they were little, and they loved it. And then when I had my daycare, I made Kool-Aid for the kids.
Plain package, just a paper package or...
Yeah, it was like fruit punch, and then you would have a cup of sugar with it. Yeah. Yeah, I do remember that, though. I wonder when they came out with Kool-Aid. We should have looked that up on the internet. That's kind of interesting. I wonder when it actually really came out, so... Anyways, and I didn't realize that way back in the day, like, when we want a book now, we just order a book or we just go to the store to buy a book because they have big manufacturing places that publish books. But I remember my grandmother saying that way back in the day when she was little, my grandmother would be like 120 now. She said that books were a luxury and books were really expensive, and you might get a favorite book or two and you just read those books over and over again because there wasn't these big, huge mass book producing places, that published and printed off these books. So she said that, they didn't have a lot of books. So she was an RN nurse back in the, I guess that would be the 40s probably, when my dad was little. My dad was born in the 30s, I think. But I think that's weird now because to me, a book's not really a luxury. It's something that you just enjoy. So I guess it is a luxury to a point. Some people maybe can't afford books, but you can buy books so cheap at like bookstores for 50 cents or the Goodwill and stuff like that, that anybody can be accessible to a book. And you can even just go to the library and check out books. But yeah, it's just different. I know when I first moved to Calusa in the 80s, the newspaper came out 3 days a week. Now it's down to 1 day a week because people read it online all the time. But where I lived in Santa Clara, the newspaper came out 7 days a week, and it was a big, thick newspaper. And the papers here are still super thin, not a lot in them. But it comes out once a week. And the one for the town over, Yuba City, it comes out 6 days a week, but it doesn't come out on Mondays. And it used to come out 7 days, but they've cut it back by 1 day. So, that's 100,000 people over there, and they've cut it back to by 1 day. So it would be interesting to see in 20 years from now if there's even a newspaper that's printed, or if you're just gonna, read it online, which I don't like reading the newspaper online. So if you guys can think of anything else about you growing up and what you didn't have as opposed to what you have now, and you don't have a channel, put it in the description or in the comments. If you have a channel, I would love to hear your stories about when you were younger. And it's even different in different areas of the United States because where we lived in California, there was electricity when my parents were young. But if you lived in some of these remote areas like in Virginia and I don't know where else, electricity didn't even come in until like, the 60s or 70s for some of those people. So, yeah. So if you have a channel, do a how old are you video and share with us things that you remember that you didn't have back when you were growing up or your grandparents told you stories about, because I think it would be really interesting. So, all right, anything else that you can remember, honey, or no?
Not really.
Not really. And we're both addicted to our iPads. And I mean, we're grown.
Wristwatches. We didn't have a lot of wristwatches. We had pocket watches.
Oh, yeah. And now you can't hardly find a pocket watch because we have a couple older men that come in and they always ask for a pocket watch and we don't have one. So now what they do, these men have taken and they buy the biggest faced watch that we have. And then they take the bands off and they just put them in their pockets. But a lot of the younger generation, they don't wear watches at all because, or if they do, it's like a Fitbit watch, it's like a Apple Watch. Now the Apple Watches are super popular because you can text off them. You can answer your phone on your watch. You can pay at the credit card machine with your watch. You can do all that stuff with your watches now. So that's the only reason why watches are coming back, because you have a tiny miniature little computer this big. It's your watch. And they said that computers were going to get tinier and tinier and tinier. And think about it. Your watch can hold, pictures, texts. It tells you. Mine tells me, how many steps I take in a day, how many times I get up at night. It shows my whole sleep pattern. And I have one of the basic ones. And some of them will count your calories that you put into your system. And it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. I mean, just think about our cars, how far they've come. Like, you can get internet in your car now.
Yeah, you drive a computer now. You're not driving a car.
Yeah, you don't even need the key to turn it. You just turn it on with your finger and you just put the key fob in your pocket or your purse. And people can track you. If you go missing and you have a newer car, they're going to find you. Because we have OnStar. So it has GPS. So if they couldn't find you for a couple of days, they could locate your car. So yeah. Same with your phones, basically. If they can't find you, if you're missing and you have your phone, they can find you. So, all right. Well, you guys take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.